When I came out here to Los Angeles, I actually never really thought of myself as an actor. I figured that's where I would, that's what I would do. That's where I would break in. But I never used that term so definitively with me. To me, I was an entertainer because I like to laugh. I'll do anything, to make somebody smile.
So
Um,
you were flexible.
yes, but I was also open to finding something that I loved.
Hmm.
Because when I left college, I could have told you I love acting, and I did. But you know something? Love changes. And sometimes it's all relative. It's like a water level. If you've ever watched one of those flood gauges that tell you how high the water rises, it'll be right here. But you don't look at that and say, well, that's the highest it can ever go. No, there's still the rest of the gauge up here. And for all you know, next week it's going to be up here. So maybe there's another level of love you can find. When I left acting and became a writer, I love this so much, what I get to do as a writer. After I got a job as a writer and I was on staff, I started being offered all these acting jobs because the producers got to know me,
Hmm.
and a lot of times I would write a character, and I sometimes will act out the character in the room, and more than one time they said you've got to play that, and I've never done it. I love the writing aspect so much. So yes, I can always say yes. I have fond memories of acting, and I do love acting. I do love performing. But if you ask me right now what my choice would be, it's going to be writing. I love writing. I love putting together a TV show. But I think that's what happens with most people. So it's really the reverse. It's why don't people allow themselves to be more open? It's
Yeah.
very difficult focusing on one thing and prejudging yourself and saying that's the only thing that can make me happy.
So you beat your head against the wall time and time again, even though the wall doesn't move, instead
Right.
of looking around you to seeing the walls that are moving.
Yeah, I mean, if you followed that philosophy in every other endeavor in your life, you would always be regretting that first girlfriend or that first boyfriend. Why look for another? That was the one you loved. You could never leave yourself open to love somebody else.
Right.
And it's kind of a foolish way to go through life.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people actually ask me this. Does that mean that I never had a goal? And I don't think that way. Um, when people ask me what is my goal, I say it's very simple. I want to be happy. I get to define what that is. But if I said I want to be an actor, well, now I've locked myself into something. That
And it
means,
might not make you happy.
and I may not be happy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already locked myself into it because that's my goal.
But darn it, yeah, so you
Yeah.
better stick to it.
And if I fail at that, well, I'm a failure.
Mm-hmm.
But if I say I want to be happy, that takes on so many different forms. And happiness can be anything. Um, the key with happiness is most of the time just figuring out what it is. That's what makes you miserable, is not figuring out what it is that makes you happy.
Yeah.
And we're getting into our massive philosophies here.
Uh-oh.
But something, the thing about writers, again, we are so internal, we need philosophies because we don't have quantifiable mechanics. We can't look at what we do and say 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6, and therefore da 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 da. We can't do that.
Right.
And the biggest fear that I have known with friends of mine is that they don't truly understand where their gift came from. Because it is a gift. I can teach you the mechanics of typing. I can teach you script format. I can teach you story structure. I cannot teach you to be a writer. I can't. You have either got that inside of you or you don't. And what happens when you start to lose it? Because there are two things with this. One is that you don't even know if you've lost it. Because how do you judge that? I mean, I can write something up and think it's brilliant and show it to Lisa, and she could hate it. Is it brilliant or is it bad? Or I could show it to you and you could say it's wonderful. Okay, well, does that make Lisa wrong? No, it doesn't. Absolutely doesn't. So, what is my judgment? What bar am I trying to satisfy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the television business and in film, it is a business, and in our business, it's when people stop paying you. So when they stop paying you, a lot of people freak out because they think I can't do it anymore. I've stopped that gift.
I've lost it.
Yeah, I've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the first part of it. The second part of it is, since you don't know what gave it to you in the first place, you can't possibly reconstruct it in your mind. And by the way, as a side note, that's where you run into a lot of substance abuse problems. And I'm not moralizing here, but I'm saying for anybody who gets into the arts, if you have any kind of an affinity for drugs or alcohol, anything that is a pleasure drug for you or an addiction, and I'm not moralizing, believe me, deal with it now. Too many people have the idea of once I'm successful, I'll be able to deal with it. That's not true. It intensifies.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because you have so much pressure on yourself. And it's not that you just go for another crutch, which people do, but when that starts slipping away from you, you look back in your past and at that snapshot of when you broke in, and you say, I've got to recreate that. And what was a part of that? Well, I was drinking a lot then. That must be my creativity. I actually got into an online thread about how many authors credited their creativity to alcoholism. And my response was, how do they know? Why is it that you think somebody who gets drunk is going to be more creative? I would say they're more out of control.
Yes.
But if they're going to be an alcoholic, I'm sorry, they would be an alcoholic as a mechanic. And for those people, I can point out 100 other authors and successful artists who are not alcoholics.
Who weren't. It's the process that you love.
I do love the process. I also love putting together a TV show. I love problem solving. So,
you like figuring out a puzzle, don't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I write a script, my first draft, I call it my zero draft, and it's for structure. It's so that I can get everything down on the paper, get all my characters on the paper. Then the fun comes in, because then I can look at it and I can forget about the structure. Now I can start concentrating on the creative storytelling and the characters themselves. The analogy I give is if you're walking through a wheat field. And as you're walking through the wheat field, you don't know which way to go because the wheat is as high as you are. So you're just kind of pushing down wheat, hoping you're going here, and at a certain point you think, I'm going to try going left, but I have all these other directions I could take. I've got to pick one. I'm going to pick this one, and you pick that. Once you get to the other side of the wheat field, to continue the analogy, you get in a helicopter, you go up in the air, and you look down, and now you see the path clearly. And you see all the choices you made.
It's great.
And you're able to now work with it.
Great analogy.
And that's the way I do it. You know, people who have hay fever should probably avoid that, but it works for me.
Not that there's just one thing, but the one thing that pops into my head that I really enjoy about your writing is that you never waste one character. If I read a script of yours and there's one guy that's got, maybe he's on for 2 pages, and I'm thinking particularly about your script where they went to the, store it place, the guy that lifts the gate. I mean, you didn't just, 6 lines, you make him, I just couldn't stop thinking about that character reading through your whole script. And I think that comes from your acting background. And I was wondering what other things that ended up being strengths in your writing followed along behind you because of your training in acting.
Actually, I think everything that I do as a writer came from my acting background, because I never learned writing, and I've
never took a class in it.
I've taught classes. I've never taken a class in it. I've never read a book in it. To this day, I've never read a book about it. What I got from acting, the strongest thing that plays into my writing is improv, and especially with television. In improvisational work, you are given a scenario and a situation. You aren't really given a story, and you and other actors then have to improv an entire scene, which means you have to instantly come up with a beginning, find yourself to a middle, and conclude it to an end. At the same time, establishing characters very quickly, but more importantly, playing off the other characters that are established without dominating, without being submissive. And your dialogue has to be totally natural. The timing has to be perfect. And this all has to happen like that. Mm. And I think that's where all of my writing basically comes from, because I act out all the characters. And I'm actually surprised at this. Many writers, when they write characters, they never bother to articulate the dialogue. They write the dialogue, but they don't say it out loud. I speak through all my dialogue. Mm-hmm. When I write a scene, I'll take a break and go to the kitchen and make a cup of coffee or something, but I'm articulating everything. Because if it doesn't flow naturally,
you're saying it out loud.
Yeah, I've got to feel it, and I've got to make sure it's natural dialogue. Mm-hmm. I also hear a specific rhythm in my head. I don't second guess what actors are going to do. That's their job. They have a tough enough job as it is. But I can't try to write toward their rhythms unless I'm given a specific actor that I'm working with. Mm-hmm. I have to write my rhythm.